point in the first couple of sessions, a lot of what we've talked about is everything that's new and a lot of the new features. And while we're going to still continue to focus on that, a lot of what we're going to look at is going to focus to include what you're already familiar with, but also how it works in SBM, some of the differences to the look and feel of the different functions. Much of it's the same, but the mechanism changes slightly. Okay, so we're gonna show you how that all looks and feels and works in SBM. Okay, so this session we're going to take a look at purchase orders, and that's off your main menu here, right under purchasing. We're going to start with purchase orders. Okay, now the first thing to note here is that the purchase order now has a summary view. Okay, and that's different than in ACPAC SAE, in MISIS SAE, whereas you would go into purchasing, you'd pull up your purchase order form, you'd pull up the finder, select the purchase order you wanted to process, and so on. In SBM, as soon as you click on this purchase order menu, we give you what we refer to kind of as a summary view here. Gives you a list of all the POs, the status of those purchase orders, and that would be relative to the status on the header of the purchase order, what its print status is, supplier number, supplier name, order date, and so on. Okay? So that's kind of a summary view. You can get a look at what purchase orders are out there, pick and choose the ones you want to process, perhaps that you're interested in looking at, and you can open them in this manner. Okay? Now, as you see here, we have titles up top here in this title bar. Okay? Now, new does just that. That's going to open up a UI that will allow you to create a new purchase order. Okay? Edit allows you to select whatever purchase order you want to do some processing on, maybe look at. You can click the Edit button, and that will open up that purchase order so that you can look at the detail information of that PO. Refresh will update the summary display that you're currently looking at. So if other users have been creating purchase orders, maybe you ran a process off of MRP to create some purchase orders, this will update the display to include any new information that would be in here since the last time you selected the purchase orders. Okay, the other thing of note here is the report drop-down. You can click on this drop-down, and it allows you to print any of our purchasing reports, which we're going to look at later on in this session, but you can very quickly and easily print out any of these POs. Selecting the given report will bring up a print UI, which will allow you to enter parameters based on what you want to print a report for. Okay. All right, so let's talk about this title bar down here. Each of these selections are actions that you could perform on a given purchase order. Okay, so as we see here, there's open, receive, expedite, close. You can print receivers, or you can invoice. Now, these selections here are dynamic based on the PO you put focus on. Okay, so you can literally select this purchase order. Okay, these are the available actions that I could possibly process on this purchase order. So I could receive, I could change some due dates, I could close it, or I could invoice it. All right, now if I select the closed purchase order, notice how those actions change, because I'm not receiving anything on a closed PO, because I know rules are the same as they were in SAE MISIS, in that if a PO header is closed, there's nothing you can do on the details except what? Except invoice, right? So I could possibly invoice. Right, so these actions will change based on the selection or the status of the purchase order that you're highlighting there. All right, so let's take a look at one of those, what one of those might look like. So let's go to this inactive purchase order. Okay, PO3 is inactive. My options change so that I could open it. Select open. It brings up PO3, brings me right to the open purchase order form. I can now set my due dates and open the purchase order. So very quickly, I select the focus I want, process the action I'm interested in processing, and I'm done and on to the next process. All right. Now up here, you can also click this Find button. Now we're dealing with a small subset of data, obviously, because this is sample data. However, in a live database, you're going to have conceivably hundreds of purchase orders in the system. The Find button opens up another title bar up here where you can actually plug in what you're interested in looking at. Okay? So I could come in here and say, I want to look for, let's say I'm interested in looking for the Gould supplier. So I type in Gould, select the field I want to search on, so in this case name, Find Now, and it immediately brings up any purchase orders that have Gould as the supplier name. Right? And then I could select the purchase order I want to process. Again, the actions are dynamic, and I'm off and processing. If I want to clear the filter, as soon as you apply one of these, you're going to see this clear button go yellow. That indicates you're filtering the displays that you're looking at. And in case the yellow button isn't enough, we're actually telling you up top here you're filtered right now. So the purchase orders you're looking at are filtered. So clear it up, and you get all the POs again. Another really cool feature that you're going to find once you start poking around in SBM is almost all of the columns can now sort with a click. I'll show you what I mean by that. Again, this is a small subset of data. However, if this were a live database, I've got a ton of purchase orders in here I might be interested in looking at. Well, maybe I'm not interested in any of the closed purchase orders. All I want to look at are my open ones. I can click on Status right here, and it sorts the column based on the status. So it groups all my open purchase orders, all my closed purchase orders, and if I had any inactive ones, they would be grouped as well. Any one of these columns can be sorted like that. If I want to get it back to PO number, I click on PO number. Print status, and so on. Okay, so group them by supplier, any one of these. All right, and that's going to be true throughout SBM. Most places you find a column name, go ahead and click on it, and that will help you sort and maybe isolate what information you're looking for. All right, so let's take a look at the purchase order, what it looks like now. So we'll go back to PO numbers. All right, we'll just bring up PO2. All right, so this is the new purchase order, all right, what it looks like. First thing to note up top here, okay, again, a title bar. You have a new button to create a new purchase order. Refresh will refresh the current record you're looking at. This is your Save button, so as you make changes to the purchase order, you're going to click on the Save. Okay, Cancel will cancel out any current changes, so if you're inserting an item, and it's the wrong item number, maybe you duplicate it, you didn't want to, cancel your current changes. You can save and automatically jump to a new purchase order. You can delete a purchase order, and the copy from is listed up here. Okay, so if you're going to create a new purchase order and copy from an existing one, this is your button. Okay, next and previous arrows will drive you to the next purchase order in the sequence. All right, so let's take a look at a new purchase order. So I click New. Similar to SAE, automatically creates a new purchase order. I'll plug in a supplier here. Now, let's say I'm creating a purchase order for details that I know are going to be for items that are qualified to this supplier. We have a neat little checkbox down here, find only qualified items for this supplier. Normally, if I go in and add a new line, okay, and I bring the finder up, I've got all my items in here. I can select whatever item I want. As you've probably seen before, I can do a look for and isolate it through the filter. However, this checkbox makes it so that now when I click the finder, my items are isolated to only items that have already been qualified for this supplier. So now, quick and easily, I know that anything that shows up in this list is already qualified, so I can select the ones I want. In theory, it's going to make it much easier for me to find and focus on the items I'm interested in putting on the PO. Okay, so we'll just go in here. We'll save this. All right, so as you may remember in SAE, this is kind of where the look and feel is a little bit different. Okay, the tabs are all basically the same, but as you'll recall in SAE, most of your buttons are at the bottom. Okay, they're at the bottom of the purchase order. Everything's up top now in this title bar. So similar to what we saw in the summary view, every time you're going to process something on this purchase order, the actions are going to get updated based on what's available to you in the status of the purchase order. Okay, so in this case, we're going to open it. Just accept the due dates. These are all the same. You've got Q, which puts it in the print queue. We're just going to open it. Okay, and now we've got a detail on this purchase order, and I'm all set. All right, it's been opened. I can now start processing it, receiving it, invoicing, closing, and so on. All right, so let's talk about the design here. One of the things you probably already noticed here, while shipping, billing, notes, these are all the same, you always now have a view of the details on the purchase order. Doesn't matter what tab you go to, you don't have to jump to the details tab. You're always going to be able to see these here. Okay, so if I'm interested in looking at my details, doesn't matter what tab I'm on, I've got access to every single field that could relate to the PO detail. All right, now another function I know a lot of you set your customers up to use is for blanket orders. Right, you're going to add or duplicate lines and then set your due dates based on each one of those details. So if it's monthly, you work those due dates out monthly. That is over here now. Okay, we still have a duplicate function. That's in the detail title bar over here to the right. Add new line, duplicating values from the one above it, and it automatically duplicates it. Very similar to SAE. Once you save it, it's going to update the status of those inactive POs, pushing them to open because that's what the current purchase order is at. All right, so there's a duplicate button, but it's over here on the right. You've got to find it. We do have a drill down. Okay, so if you want to drill down, well, select the cell, and it brings up the items. Okay, and then if you want to delete something or add a new line, those are over here. Okay, if you want to move lines from one position to another, okay, it's still the same as in SAE. You're still locked in because we need to know what the line number is, so they have to remain static here. Okay. All right, so as we saw in the summary view, same thing is true of the details. Okay. You can sort on the columns. Fortunately, let me add a new line in here. Just so we can see an example of how they sort up. Okay, so I want to sort by item number. Click on this column, and it'll sort by item number. The same is true here. We're just dealing with duplicate items, so that is all the same. All right, so we looked at custom fields in the last session, all right, and how those work. Let's say you're on a purchase order, and you realize, hey, this would be a cool time to add a custom field. Click on Edit up here, and you have the ability to bring up and launch that custom fields form, okay, and create your custom field dynamically, all right, from the purchase order section. And this is true of the other functions as well. Click on that Edit. You can access custom fields, create your custom field. Right. Now, the Miscellaneous tab is a new tab that you'll find, and that's what contains the costing information, okay, and the dates. All right, they're no longer shown, and there isn't really a PO header tab anymore. So what you'll find is most of that information is handled on the Miscellaneous tab. So any of the costs you receive, totals, the last maintained dates, and things like that, they're all on that Miscellaneous tab. All right, so let's look at some of the actions that can take place on the purchase order. Almost all of these are the same. However, they look and are processed a little bit differently than they were in SAE. Right? In particular, we utilize checkboxes to drive the processing. So you're going to select what details you're interested in receiving on. Okay? So if we check the first one, as soon as you click off it, it's going to populate and default based on the balance that remains to be received. Okay? And that works the same as SAE. Right? You can check all to facilitate a receive all. You can pick and choose which details you want to receive on by simply deselecting the ones you're not interested in processing at this point. All right? Once you're ready to receive those in, click on Receive Checked, and it will go through whichever details are checked. It's going to receive the quantities that you've specified. Okay? You get a prompt, and you've now received those quantities. The PO receiver looks much the same as it did in SAE. Automatically comes up as you close that receive form, just like in SAE. Okay, the expedite form. This looks and feels much the same as it did in SAE. Can come in here, again, change your current due. You've got promised and initial. Okay, and your other detail info. Invoice. Okay, invoicing form looks a little bit different. Okay, you select your transaction date. That is the date MISIS uses to drive the invoice transaction in our history. So in the master transaction log, whatever transaction date you put in here is the date we recorded in the log. Okay. Select a line, and then invoice it. Automatically goes over to ACPAC, creates an entry in your AP batch. Okay, you get a prompt telling you what batch it went into. You're now all set. Close purchase order. Again, we're working with checkboxes now. Select the PO details you wish to close, and then you can close checked. All right? Now, if you need to change any of the costing information, just double-click on a field. So if that PO price has changed a little bit since you received it, this is where you're going to change it, okay, from this field. Okay, closes the line. Now, from the top of this title, you can also print the purchase order. If you're set up to send it, you can send the purchase order here. If you have any outstanding receivers you haven't printed yet, click on Print Receivers, and if there are any out there, it'll throw them up and print them out for you. Okay, so that's really basically all the changes that take place on the purchase order. Okay, it looks a little bit different. The process is a little bit different, but most of this is, especially if you have a background in working with MISIS SAE, you're going to be able to navigate through this without much of a hitch at all. Okay, the key thing with the processing end of it, remember we have check boxes. You're going to check them off and then receive, invoice, or close check, right? And that's what actually drives the transaction to take place. Okay? All right, so this is manually creating the purchase order. So let's talk about some other changes. Now, many of you may or may not be aware of, one of the more recent changes in SAE is that we've made it so that when you drive or print a buyer's advice report, you can actually generate an MRP from that. Okay? Now, you can also do that in SBM, but we've enhanced that feature, okay, and I'm going to show you how. If you go under Reports and then select Purchasing, you're going to see the buyer's advice here. All right, now when you select that, for those of you who remember, buyer's advice in SAE is driven by items whose stock plus on-order quantity is less than the reorder level of that item at that location. All right, in SBM, by default, that same is true. Okay, but you have the ability to select the shortage basis that you're interested in creating the report for. Right? So many times you might want to drive an MRP or even just the report to show you items that are less than minimum or items that are less than zero, and you want to also get all that supplier information that made the buyer's advice so attractive. You know, we obviously have the shortage report, which is driven off of minimum. That's a different report. But this one will allow you to get supplier information based off of minimum if I'm not interested in reorder. Or if I'm interested in stuff that's less than zero, I select zero so that I can see my critical items, right, and drive an MRP from that. Get my supplier information if I just want to get a printout, right? This will change based on the selections you made. So let's look at what the printout looks like first. So if I click Reorder and I preview this, right, here are all my items along with qualified supplier information that are less than reorder, okay, less than reorder level. If I want to say, well, actually, reorder's okay, I want to check minimum. Select minimum, preview that. Okay, I have fewer items now. I have less items now that are below their minimums at whatever location I'm interested in. Okay, and zero does the same. Now, the other thing I can change here is the reorder quantity or meet requirement. Now, that's going to drive the quantity, I'm told, to actually generate the PO details for. Either reorder quantity, which is going to bump it up to the next logical increment of the reorder quantity that I defined for this item at that location. Okay, so if I need 60 and I have a reorder quantity of 100 because that's all I ever buy it in, this would bump that 60 up to 100 because that's what I buy it in, boxes of 100, right, or whatever. Or I select meet requirement, and I'm going to get a PO detail requirement for eaches. Okay, you can choose to include or exclude supplier info, and you can print that report, get all that information. Now, let's go ahead and create MRP and see how that looks and feels. All right, so we'll create MRP. We're going off of minimum, so we should just have a small subset of items. Okay. Under the purchasing menu, just like in SAE, there's a process MRP. Right? Now, in SAE, for those of you who may not remember, there's a drop-down you choose. Okay, you select a drop-down, you're going to select your scheduling MRP, your buyer's advice MRP, or your stock check MRP. Right? These are going to show it to you on the summary view. Just select the one you want, either click on process down here, or you double-click it, and it brings up the details based on your user's MRP creation. Okay, in our case, our source is buyer's advice. Here are the details we need. Here's our short quantities. Right? This looks a little bit different, but it's actually very similar to the way it looks in SAE. Select the detail you're interested in. Click on Buy Item. Okay, you get the Buy Requirement form. This is similar to that Buy Detail form that you get in SAE. You get a list of your qualified suppliers here. Select the one you want. In this case, I only have one. And I could click New PO, and it'll bring this guy up as the default supplier. If I wanted to check any existing purchase orders that were out there for this item, I simply click the Item PO tab, and if I had any out here and I wanted to add this detail for this quantity, I would simply click the Add PO Detail button, and it would throw it right on an existing purchase order for me and satisfy the requirement without creating a purchase order. All right? These are all functions that, while you may not be familiar with them, are available in SAE, but there's a lot more button clicks. We're throwing up a few more forms, Okay, we're trying to streamline this for you. Click a tab, click New PO, click Add Detail, and you're good to go. Okay, so new purchase order. Right, pulls up 2235. If I had other qualified suppliers similar to SAE, they're going to show up here. I can push that supplier down here because that's the one I want to create. Or I click the Finder and select a different supplier if I need to choose a different supplier. Quantity jumps in here. I have all the same options that you do in SAE. Okay, multiples or supplier or recent cost. Create PO, goes out and creates a purchase order for me. All right, so that requirement is satisfied. It's now gone from the display, and I'm only left with other items that I have to process or create purchase orders for. Okay, so this is buyer's advice. Pretty straightforward. Key feature there, you have the option now to drive your buyer's advice based on other stocking thresholds besides reorder level. Okay. Now, there's another place that we actually touched on a few moments ago that you can also drive the MRP from, which is stock check. Right? This is also available in SAE, but we'll just take a look at what it looks like in SBM. Okay, so let's say we're going to simulate a build of an item. We're interested in what's going to happen to our inventory if we were to actually build, say, 10,000 of this item. We click Initialize, Assemble. Okay, this is simulating the build of this I-56. Click Display, and I get the results based on what the effect would be on my inventory if I were to actually build 10,000 of that item. I can print this out as we looked at in an earlier session, or I click Create MRP. All right, MRP asks me if I want to create purchase orders right now. I'll say yes, and it brings us right to our source MRP, which in this case is stock check, for my user, and here are all the items that I need to purchase. I can come through and click Buy Item. Select my qualified supplier, or I could check for any existing. In this case, let's say we want to create it for $21.50. New purchase order, $21.50 becomes the default, but if I wanted to switch to the fastest delivery because I need it right away, I click the little go arrow down here and it pushes it down into that supplier number. Create purchase order, and now I'm creating my POs. Okay, so let's take a look at one other feature you might not be aware of, which again also exists in SAE. If a lot of times people have the need to add details to purchase orders when they're generating, or they want to do it when they're generating them through MRP. For instance, comments. Okay, you do have the ability to enter comments even when you're driving a purchase order, okay, through the MRP. Okay, so we come in here, go to IO1, item purchase order, okay, go to Add Detail, or excuse me. Okay, come in here. It is just going to require, come in here and add your detail through here. Okay, your detail type is still a drop-down. Okay, and you put a comment in here. Obviously, yours would be more meaningful than numbers. Okay, so MRP stock check, as well as buyer's advice. Okay, so let's take a look at, we've created our purchase orders, and we talked about dashboard alerts. Let's take a look at how the dashboard alerts now could work for a user. Let's say there's a user who only ever is going to process purchase orders, or maybe that's their primary function at the company they work at. They come into dashboard alerts. They could create an alert in the dashboard, okay, similar to what we've got set up here, called, say, current purchase orders. So when they log into MySys, the very first thing they see is a red icon next to their dashboard alert. Okay, now we've configured this dashboard alert to allow for some actions. So we've said allow actions off this dashboard to receive on purchase orders, expedite purchase orders, invoice purchase orders, and close PO items. All right? So we're going to click Next just so you can see how we've set this up. What we've said is for this alert, I want you to show me PO details whose current due date is equal to or less than today. The PO detail status needs to be open because I'm going to do one of those 4 actions based on purchase orders I see in this display. Okay? So what we've got here are all the PO details that meet that criteria. So in our case, we're saying these details are either due today or they're overdue. So I'm going to have to process some actions on these PO details. All right? So what you can do from here now, let's say for this item, I want to receive quantities on I-05. I highlight it. Down here, I'm going to choose my action, in this case, receive POs. Click on the Go button. Brings up the Receive PO Items form. I select my detail, receive check, and now I've received quantities on this purchase order. I get my receiver, and I move on to the next detail. All right? Now, let's say I need to expedite some of these. Maybe some of these I haven't got a receiver in yet. I call the supplier up, and I find out that they're not due or they're not going to be shipped in until next week. So I might click on PO4, expedite purchase order, click Go, and I could change the due date for that detail, all from this dashboard. So I could go through and process all these details based on the alert I've set up here. Okay, and you could get as elaborate with these as you needed to, based on whatever that user is going to be doing. Okay. Now the other way you could do this, let's take the same expedite example and flow into the last part of the purchasing webinar, which is the supplier schedule. Okay, if I've got some purchase orders in here that I know need to be expedited, I could now go into purchasing up top here, which is supply schedule. Okay, now what the supply schedule shows you is a graph of all the PO details that are currently in the system, along with what their due dates are. Right? Now, some of you may remember when we looked at this before, you can click and drag each of these months out to show you individual days of each of the months. Right? So what I could do here, let's say we're dealing with PO4. So we find PO4 down here. I'm going to scroll over. PO4, line 7, is due in July sometime. We can click and stretch out the details to actually update the dates of the purchase order details. So you can expedite the PO by clicking and dragging due dates from the supplier schedule. We prompt you, as you're probably all familiar with in SAE, is this supplier initiated, because that's going to drive an update to the supplier statistics. I click yes. Okay, and I've updated the supplier statistics, and I've updated the due date on this PO for line 7 so that it's now going to reflect a due date out in August. So if we go to that purchase order, PO4, okay, current due is now out in August. Okay, so all the expediting now can be done through that supplier schedule UI, and you can click and drag that way rather than visiting each purchase order one at a time and going to expedite. Still do that. However, you can also use a supplier schedule for it. Okay, and it gives you the option to view it 3 different ways: purchase orders, okay, and that groups them by PO, by supplier, or by items. Now, lastly, let's talk about reports for a minute. We're going to start visiting the reports menu because it's a little bit different than you're used to in SAE. If you start poking around in the different reports groups in SBM, what you're going to find is that at face value, it looks like there are fewer reports than were in SAE. However, that is not true. What you'll find is we've been able to enhance the reports to give you multiple options off of each individual report. Okay, so for instance, we looked at buyer's advice. Okay, what you find here is you have the ability to actually print 3 different flavors of the buyer's advice based on selections you make in the drop-downs. Okay, and you can even get more elaborate than that when you start making selections off order quantity, supplier info, and so on. That used to be buyer's advice includes supplier info, and then another report for buyer's advice. Okay, all of that's going to be true, and that's going to be true in each one of these report groups. As you start looking at each of those, you're going to find that you have different options which allow you to get the same information you got from multiple reports in SAE. Okay, and in most cases, you're going to find even more information available. Okay, and more direction available for you to take from one report UI. Okay, so the PO approval report, you're all familiar with. Okay, now, before I get ahead of myself, excuse me, there's also the ability to see and show samples of each of the reports without having to print one each time. Click on the Show Samples radio button down here, and every report you click on, sometimes you'll have to refresh them. Every report you click on is going to show you an example of what that report will look like based on sample data. So there's PO approval, all orders, overdue orders, and so on. And this is true of every one of the reports that you'll find in MySys. You go in here and select it. If you want to show examples, you don't have to drive an example by actually printing a report and defining parameters for it. Okay, just use the sample ones and click on whichever one you're interested in. All right, so let's look at some of these and how they are. Again, PO approval, that looks much the same. All orders. This is another example of one of those where we've combined basically 3 reports into one UI. So you either choose to exclude details, give you a summary of the all orders report, you include details, or you include with additional costs based on the selection you make there. Different sort options, PO or by supplier number. Okay, get source or functional currency. Overdue orders, same deal. Include details, exclude details. Right, you get the idea. Give it your due date and so on. Outstanding order value, same type of deal there. All right, so we've combined all of these reports and tried to streamline them and provide you with additional options all from one UI. Okay. And that's basically it. That's advanced purchasing.
Okay, Doug, thanks very much. This is Dave Brown. I'm looking out the window. It's still snowing, but the good news is we still have electricity. So, anyway, I'll be happy to field any questions, and we'll see if we can stump Doug. Hey, Doug, I did have a question during the session about what that card view switch did. You want to show us that?
Sure.
You know what I mean, right?
I believe I do.
Yeah, I thought you would. So this is like just a different way of looking at the same information, right?
Yes. Yep. And it's basically just that. It's in a card view. Gives you each of the details, each of the items. You can look at it in basically a card format. Sure. Yep.
Okay. Great. And Ian would like us to know that in the Midlands, in the UK, they still have snow on the ground. Are you impressed, Doug?
I am very impressed, yes. Of course,
Okay.
I have nothing to base that on, though. So.
No.
But it sounds impressive.
Yeah. Okay. Who else has got a question about advanced purchasing? I did point out to somebody the other day that although this is an extra cost optional module, we find that over 90% of our users actually elect to buy the module. We took it out because a lot of people said that they didn't need it, didn't want to pay for it. They had a pad of paper that they used for their purchasing. So that's the reason for taking it out of the product and not making people pay for it if they didn't need it. So Eva from Australia says, is there any way that that when invoicing you can see what has been previously invoiced? Want to handle that, Doug?
Sure. Over to the right here, and I guess I'll, let me just click and drag that out so you can get a view of what that looks like. So over here, you actually get those columns that will show up here. Now, by default, we'll automatically populate the quantity that you're about to invoice based on the balance between what's been received and invoiced. But you can then change that, obviously, if you need to reflect partial invoices or what have you. But, yeah, those columns are right here. This will already show you what's previously been invoiced. We do have, and I know a lot of you, it's a very popular report, that order invoice value report is still there under the purchasing menu to show what's left to be invoiced. But, yeah, dynamically on the fly, as you go to invoice details, that information is all going to be right on that invoicing form. Yep. And you can also change the invoice amount, as I know we all need to do pretty often. So that can be changed.
And as a follow-up, Eva asks, is there any way to see the dollar value on the screen?
The previous balance, not on this. Well, actually, I stand corrected, yes, right over here. So you probably want to click and drag this over so that you could get your invoice dollars.
And I'm sure Eva's typing right now. I am incredibly impressed, Doug. That's great. Okay, let's see. Going on. Thanks, Eva. Dana asks, when adding invoices to an AP batch, will it add to an open batch or does it create a new batch each time?
To the very next batch you're working on, so whatever the current AP batch is.
So I think it said it does not create a new batch each time, right?
Unless it had to.
Unless it had to, because there was no batch. All right.
That's correct.
Frankie Chan asks, can you show me again how to add an optional field in the PO detail?
Sure. So what you would do is go into housekeeping. Select PO detail. Click on edit. Add.
Commodity code. Sure, whatever.
Whatever, yep. You choose the type of field that you're going to add. And now the next time you go into purchasing for one of those purchase orders, you've got your column right here.
Okay.
You can have as many of those
Frank
as you want.
Is duly impressed with that.
Yep.
Okay. What is the length of a single text field? Do you happen to know that, Doug? Dana wants to know.
2,000 characters.
Is that right? Good. I'll have to write that down. I get asked fairly often. I'm never sure. 2,000 characters, he says.
The same is true of a multi-line. The big difference between multi-line and single line is, one processes carriage returns, whereas the other one's just a static single line field. But, yeah.
Okay.
2,000.
Let's see. Eva has another question. Is there a way to indicate that a PO is a blanket PO so that you could say, this is a blanket PO for 100,000 of a particular item and be drawn over X months?
Well, there isn't a particular status for that. In theory, there are a number of ways you could do it. Just off the top of my head, you might work something into the PO number or description that maybe POs that started with a B in the prefix might be an indicator that they're blankets. You could also work it into the description of the purchase order. Those are the types of things that would commonly be used. But as far as an actual status, there is not. No.
Okay, Dana. So the optional field is just added. You just added is 2,000 characters.
That is correct.
I think we got to make it clear. You don't have to type all 2,000, do you, Doug?
No, but you have that ability.
It's okay if you just type 2.
Yep, it'll just keep on going.
Yeah. Let's see. Question here. Regarding an open AP batch being appended to, does it mean that if someone was working on an AP batch, say for utilities, and someone posts an SBMPO invoice, that the invoice would end up in the batch designated for utilities? In setup, is there any way to make it always create a new batch? Sounds like a good thing.
Question. Yeah, let's take a look.
Good thing for our wish list. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, there's no option there. You do have the option to automatically post it.
I think that's a good one. I'm gonna.
It is. Yeah.
Put that on the wish list. Thanks, Dave. Let's see. Dana's got another one. Is the supplier address changeable on the PO header?
Shipping or billing? Well, you could change either, but yes.
Yeah, I guess the answer is yes. You're welcome, Dana. Let's see. Jamie Schmelson. Are the optional fields added to the same SQL table or are they in another linked table?
Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
Basically, he wants to know where the optional fields are kept in what table. I think that's magic, isn't it, Doug?
Well, yeah. I mean, what happens is that field actually does get created. It's a little much to get into at this point, but basically it does get added to that table, yeah.
And the follow-up question from Jamie is, can you add custom fields to the details or only the headers?
No, the one we walked through was added to the detail. If we add one to the header, it gets its own tab. So you can go header and detail. Yep.
I'm going to ask a question on behalf of Sam, who, after asking the question, left. Is this similar to SAE Level 1 if you purchase this additional module? Maybe what he's thinking about, Doug, we've talked about the basic manufacturing module plus now the advanced purchasing. And I guess if you put those together, you have the equivalent pretty much of MISIS SAE Level 1. Would you agree?
I would totally agree. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And then some, actually. I mean, you actually get more.
You get a bunch more, right?
Yep. Yep.
Let's see. Okay. Try to get these notes. Dana asked, do the optional fields become searchable in the Finder or list?
Well, they become sortable as far as finding on them. All right, so let's see. That is a good question. I'm not sure. Who is that? Dana? Dana Stidson?
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah.
I've lost that from my screen.
I see. Send
read that in the log.
Yeah.
We'll follow up with that, Doug.
Yeah.
And speaking of the log, Eva, yes, we've noted your comment, and we'll give that some consideration. And I'll ask Doug to get back to you on that. You've got a couple of questions that are fairly detailed.
Oh, okay.
Get personal response. Rebecca Helton asks, can you elaborate on the feature that's in SE but not in SPM, no PO invoice GL account by PO line? What does that mean? You remember that, Doug, in the what you lose?
No PO.
Yeah, we tell people that in SPM there is no PO invoice GL account by PO line.
I think what that's referring to is in SAE, you have the ability to designate a GL, well, what would be a GL account number or a distribution account on the detail, which would then flow through to the AP batch. I think that's what that's referring to, which is not available here.
Okay.
So you can, you know, in
Frankie
SAE.
Do we allow PO for non-stocked item in SPM?
Sure. Yep. Miscellaneous details, same as SAE.
And Jamie, if two tables have the same custom field, do they inherit the values?
No. No, they are independent of each other.
Okay. All right. Anybody else got a question? Okay. Well, while waiting for any stragglers, I'll point out, if you haven't already discovered it, that the recordings of these sessions are posted about a day after the session happens on our website. And we hope that you'll go and listen to them again so that you absorb all the information. Also, on that same page, you're able to register for the next sessions, so make sure you get yourself registered for those additional sessions we have coming up. There's some really swell content I think that you'll be very impressed with. And on the last day, which right now is the 9th session about custom reporting, we're going to show you some of the things that we are doing internally with regard to reporting, even though it may be that functionality has not been released. I also asked Scott Beavers to make himself available for maybe 10 or 15 minutes in that session to talk to you about his revised, his new and improved, much whiter and brighter business partner program before we all say goodbye. So, at any rate, without any more questions, thank you very much for your attention. Doug, thanks for putting on a good presentation. Appreciate it always. Okay. And we'll see you, let's see, what's the next date? I think it's on Friday.
Friday.
Good day.
Okay.